The night was cold and heavy as Officer Mark drove slowly through the quiet street behind the old market where trash bags were stacked high and broken lights barely showed the road, and this place was known for silence and forgotten people, and Mark had learned that silence often carried hidden pain, and as his car moved forward his headlights fell on a small shape near the trash, and at first he thought it was only waste piled together, but then he saw movement, and his heart slowed as he stopped the car and stepped out into the cold air, and the smell was strong but he ignored it, and walked closer. And there he saw a little girl lying on cardboard among the trash with her arms wrapped around a small dog, and her body was thin and weak, and her clothes were dirty and torn, and the dog was pressed against her chest trying to keep her warm, and when Mark moved closer the dog lifted its head, and made a low warning sound, not angry but afraid, and Mark stopped and lowered himself slowly to the ground to show he meant no harm, and he spoke softly so the night would not feel louder for the child, and the girl opened her eyes slowly, and fear filled them, and she pulled the dog closer, and said nothing, and her hands were shaking from the cold, and Mark noticed her shoes were broken, and her jacket was far too large and worn, and it was clear she had been here many nights, and the dog rested its head on her shoulder like it knew its job was to protect her, and Mark felt something heavy in his chest because no child should be sleeping in a place like this, and he asked her name gently, and after a long pause she whispered Lily, and the dog wagged its tail slightly and licked her cheek, and she gave a small tired smile, and Mark asked if she had family nearby, and Lily shook her head slowly, and said it was just her, and the dog whose name was Max, and Mark looked around at the trash and broken bags, and felt the cold wind cut through his uniform, and he removed his jacket and placed it over Lily and Max, and she flinched at first, then relaxed when she felt the warmth, and Mark said they needed to go somewhere safe, and Lily looked at him with fear, and asked if Max would be taken away, and Mark promised he would not, and she nodded slowly, and as Mark helped her stand he noticed how light she felt, and how tightly she held Max, and as they walked to the patrol car Lily kept looking back at the trash like she was afraid to leave even this place, and Mark opened the car door and helped her inside and turned the heater on, and Max curled up beside her without letting go, and Lily slowly stopped shaking, and Mark drove toward the station, but his mind was full of questions and sadness, and he wondered how a child so young could end up sleeping among trash, and what kind of life had brought her here, and Lily stared out the window quietly, and Max rested his head on her lap, and Mark asked softly how long she had been there, and Lily said many nights, and said they moved when people chased them away, and Mark felt anger but held it inside, and Lily explained that her mother had gotten sick, and they had nowhere to stay after that, and people stopped helping, and she and Max stayed together because Max never left her side, and Mark listened, and felt the truth breaking inside him piece by piece, and when they reached the station Mark brought Lily inside, and gave her warm food, and she ate slowly like she was afraid it might disappear, and Max watched every bite carefully, and Mark noticed how Lily always made sure Max ate first, and how the dog trusted her completely, and as the night passed Mark knew this was not just a rescue but the beginning of something that would stay with him forever, and as Lily fell asleep holding Max close Mark sat nearby and looked at them, and felt a deep sadness mixed with a strong need to protect, and he knew that once he heard the full truth nothing would ever feel the same again. Officer Mark watched the small girl sleep on the station couch while the heater made a soft warm sound, and Lily held Max close as if the world could steal him in 1 second, and Mark kept his voice low while he spoke to the front desk worker, and asked for clean water, and a small blanket, and when he returned Lily was awake, and her eyes moved fast as if she expected trouble, and Max lifted his head and stayed between her and the room, and Mark sat a little distance away so she would not feel trapped, and he offered her a cup of warm tea and a small sandwich, and told her she could eat slowly, and Lily nodded and took tiny bites while Max watched carefully, and Mark noticed her hands were rough for someone so young, and her fingers had small marks as if she had been holding bags and cardboard for many days, and he asked where she had been sleeping before this night, and Lily said different corners behind shops and sometimes under a bridge when the wind was too strong, and Mark felt a tight pain in his chest, and he asked if anyone had ever helped her, and Lily said some people gave food once in a while but most people looked away, and she said the worst part was not the cold but the feeling that nobody could see her, and Mark looked at Max and saw the dog had a small cut on one ear and for missing in places, and it was clear the dog had fought the world to stay close to Lily, and Mark asked how Lily met Max, and Lily looked down for a moment, and then said Max came to her when she cried near a bus stop, and he was hungry too, and she shared her bread, and he stayed, and she named him Max because it sounded strong and safe, and Mark felt something break inside him again because a child should not have to name safety in the form of a dog, and Mark asked gently about her mother, and Lily went quiet, and her eyes became wet, but she did not cry loudly, and she said her mother was kind, and always tried to smile even when she was tired, and she said her mother worked long hours cleaning houses and sometimes came home with sore hands, and Lily said they lived in one small room and it was not much but it was home, and then her mother got sick and could not work and the room owner told them to leave because there was no money, and Lily said she tried to ask neighbors for help but most people were scared of trouble, and she said her mother became weaker and weaker, and one day she did not wake up, and Lily said she waited beside her for a long time and kept talking to her and asking her to open her eyes, and when nothing happened, Lily got scared and ran outside, and then she did not know what to do next, and Mark listened without interrupting, and his jaw tightened, and he held his hands together to keep them steady, and he asked if any family member could be called, and Lily said she did not know her father, and her mother never talked about him, and she said she had no other family in the city, and Mark realized the story was bigger than one cold night, and he asked for a social worker contact and a nearby shelter contact, and while he made calls he kept checking Lily to make sure she was still calm, and Max stayed close to Lily like a shadow, and when a station worker offered to take the dog outside, Lily panicked and stood up quickly, and Mark raised his hand and told everyone to step back, and he promised Lily again that Max would not be taken away, and Lily sat down slowly but her breathing stayed fast, and Mark understood that trust was fragile and needed time, and he changed his plan and asked for permission to keep Lily in a quiet office for the night so she would not be surrounded by strangers, and he brought a small pillow and a clean blanket and placed a bowl of water near Max, and Lily watched every move like she was studying whether kindness was real, and Mark spoke softly and told her she was safe here and that nobody would hurt her, and Lily looked at him and asked why he cared, and Mark paused because the answer felt heavy and simple at the same time, and he said because she was a child and because she deserved warmth and because he could not drive past her and pretend it was normal, and Lily looked away. But the fear in her eyes softened just a little, and Mark stepped out to speak with the social worker on the phone, and the social worker said they could come in the morning and they would start a proper check and find a safe place for Lily, and Mark asked if the dog could stay with her, and the social worker said rules were strict but they would try to find an option, and Mark felt worry because he could see that Max was not just a pet, but Lily reasoned to breathe calmly, and Mark returned to the office and found Lily awake again, and she was rubbing Max's ears as if she was telling him not to leave, and Mark sat nearby and asked if she had eaten enough, and Lily said she saved a piece for Max and she gave it to him with careful hands, and Max ate gently and then licked her fingers, and Mark saw a small moment of peace on her face, and he decided he would not let this end with one night of warmth, and he began thinking of what he could do within rules and beyond rules, and he looked at Lily and Max and felt a strong promise rise inside him. And he told Lily that tomorrow would be different, and that he would stay near her until someone safe arrived, and Lily did not fully believe it yet, but she nodded and rested her head on the pillow, and in the quiet room the city outside kept moving like nothing happened, while inside that office a small child and a loyal dog finally had a place to sleep without fear for one more night. Morning light entered the station through the dusty window, and Officer Mark had barely slept because his mind kept replaying the moment he saw Lily among the trash, and when he checked the quiet office he found Lily sitting up with Max curled against her side, and her eyes looked calmer but still careful, and Mark brought warm milk and simple breakfast, and Lily ate slowly while sharing small pieces with Max, and Mark noticed how Lily always checked the door as if she expected someone to take her away, and Mark told her the social worker would arrive soon, and Lily nodded but did not ask questions because she had learned that questions often brought bad answers, and after some time a woman named Sarah arrived with a simple bag and a gentle voice, and she introduced herself from a child support team, and she crouched down to Lily level and asked if she could sit near her, and Lily held Max tighter, but she did not move away, and Sarah spoke softly and asked how Lily was feeling, and Lily said tired, and Sarah nodded like she understood, and she offered Lily a small, soft toy from her bag, and Lily touched it like it was something fragile and new, and Mark watched closely because he did not want Lily to feel pushed, and Sarah asked if Lily could tell her where she lived before, and Lily explained in simple words about the small room and the days of moving from place to place, and Sarah listened without judging, and Mark could see Sarah was trying to build trust instead of rushing the process, and then Sarah gently asked about Lily's mother, and Lily looked down, and her hands began to shake, and Max placed his head on her lap, and Sarah did not force her to speak, and instead said that sometimes hearts hold heavy things and it takes time to say them out loud, and Lily blinked fast and nodded, and Mark felt relief that Sarah was kind and patient, and Sarah then explained that the city had places where Lily could sleep safely and eat every day and go to school, and Lily heard the word school, and her eyes changed like she remembered something good from long ago, and she whispered that her mother used to say school was the way to a brighter life, and Sarah smiled and said her mother was right, and that Lily could still have that brighter life, and Lily asked in a small voice if Max could come too, and the room became quiet because everyone knew the answer was not simple, and Sarah admitted that some places did not allow animals, but she promised she would try to find a solution, and Mark stepped in and said Max was not only a dog but Lily comfort and protection, and he said taking Max away would break Lily trust, and Sarah nodded and said she agreed and she would make calls right away, and Mark felt grateful because he was scared of losing Lily calm, and Sarah asked Mark if he knew any community foster options that allowed pets, and Mark said he could ask around, and he made phone calls to a local rescue group, and a family shelter, and a community volunteer he knew from past cases, and while he waited for answers he stayed near Lily so she would not feel alone, and Lily watched Mark work and she seemed confused because she did not understand why a stranger would fight for her dog and her safety at the same time, and Mark tried to explain in simple words that some people still care, and that she deserved to be cared for, and Lily looked at Max and then looked back at Mark, and her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back, and she asked quietly if her mother would be angry that she was still here, and Mark shook his head gently, and said her mother would want her to be safe and warm, and to keep going, and Lily swallowed hard and hugged Max, and for the first time her shoulders dropped as if she could breathe a little deeper, and soon Mark got a call from the rescue group, and they said there was a temporary foster home that sometimes accepted a child with a pet when a special request was made, but the home was outside the busy city area, and it needed approval, and Sarah said she could work on approval today if Mark could help with transport and paperwork, and Mark agreed without hesitation, and Lily listened and asked where it was, and Sarah described it as a small home with a garden and a warm room, and Lily looked unsure because change was scary, but the word garden made her eyes soften because she remembered her mother talking about flowers as a sign of hope, and Max wagged his tail slightly as if he could feel the energy shift, and Mark then had to take Lily for a quick health check at a nearby clinic, and Sarah joined them, and they drove carefully while Lily held Max close in the back seat, and Mark noticed Lily staring at houses and lights and people walking with shopping bags, as if she was looking at a different world, and at the clinic the nurse was kind and gave Lily clean wipes and checked her hands and face, and Mark waited outside the door to give Lily privacy, and when Lily came out she looked cleaner and lighter like the dirt of the streets had been a heavy coat, and Max got a small check too, and the nurse cleaned his ear and gave him food, and Mark saw Lily smile when Max ate from a clean bowl, and after the clinic Sarah received a message confirming the temporary home could accept Lily and Max for now while longer plans were arranged. And Mark felt a wave of relief but also fear because he knew Lily had been hurt by broken promises before, and he did not want this new plan to become another disappointment, and Mark explained the plan slowly to Lily, and told her he would drive her there himself, and Sarah would meet them there, and Lily asked if Mark would leave after that, and Mark hesitated, but then told her he would visit and check on her, and he would not forget her, and Lily looked at him for a long moment like she was testing if those words were real, and then she nodded and held Max a little less tightly, and as they drove out of the city the noise faded and the road opened to quieter streets and trees, and Lily pressed her forehead near the window and watched the sky brighten, and Mark could see a small spark returning in her face, and Max sat calm for the first time because the air felt safer, and when they reached the home a woman named Nora opened the gate and smiled warmly, and she had gentle eyes and calm hands, and she greeted Lily like a person not like a problem, and she greeted Max too and offered him a bowl of water, and Lily looked surprised, and Mark could see the wall around her heart start to crack, and Nora showed Lily a small room with a clean bed and simple toys, and Lily stepped inside slowly like she expected it to disappear, and she sat on the edge of the bed and touched the blanket, and Max jumped up beside her, and Nora said Lily could rest and eat and take a bath whenever she felt ready, and Mark watched Lily in that room and felt his throat tighten because something as simple as a clean bed should never feel like a miracle, and Sarah arrived with papers and explained next steps in gentle words, and Lily listened quietly while holding Max's hand in her own way by keeping her fingers in his fur, and Mark signed what he needed and promised to return soon, and when it was time to go Mark stood at the door, and Lily looked up at him and whispered, "Thank you," and Mark nodded and said she was brave and that bravery would take her far, and Lily did not smile wide, but her eyes showed a little light, and as Mark walked back to his car, he felt the truth in his chest again that the world could be cruel and careless, but one choice could still matter, and he decided he would keep choosing to matter for Lily until she no longer needed to fear the night. Days passed, and the small home with the garden began to feel less like a strange place, and more like a quiet shelter where Lily could breathe without fear, and every morning Nora opened the curtains to let sunlight fill the room, and Lily would sit up slowly, as if she still expected the cold street to be waiting outside, and Max stayed close to her, but his body language changed because he no longer needed to guard her every second, and Nora cooked simple meals and never rushed Lily to talk, and this patience became the first kind of safety Lily had felt in a long time, and Sarah visited often to check progress and bring books and clean clothes, and Lily started choosing a different shirt each day like a small sign that she was coming back to herself, and Mark returned after his shifts whenever he could, and each time he arrived Max ran to the gate with a wagging tail, and Lily followed at a slower pace, but her eyes did not look as scared as before, and Mark always kept his promises, and that consistency slowly repaired the broken trust inside Lily's heart, and one afternoon Mark brought a small notebook and crayons, and said Lily could draw anything she wanted, and Lily hesitated but then sat at the table, and began drawing a small room with a single window, and a woman standing beside a child and a dog, and Mark understood without words that Lily was drawing her past, and trying to make sense of it, and Nora placed a cup of warm milk beside her, and did not interrupt, and Lily kept drawing, and then she drew a garden too, and that garden was new, and it showed that her mind was starting to imagine a future, and later Lily asked Nora if she could help water the plants, and Nora smiled and handed her a small watering can, and Lily walked slowly between the pots while Max trotted beside her, and she poured water carefully, as if she was afraid to spill even one drop, and Nora told her plants grow when they are cared for every day, and Lily paused and looked at Nora, as if she was hearing something about herself, and not about plants, and in the evening Mark sat on the porch while Lily played with Max near the grass, and Mark told Nora and Sarah that he could not stop thinking about the night he found Lily among the trash, and he said he kept wondering how many other children were hidden in places people avoided, and Sarah said that many stories stay invisible until someone stops to look, and Mark nodded, because that was exactly what happened, and Nora then told Mark that Lily sometimes woke up at night and checked the door and held Max tightly, and Mark felt pain because he knew fear does not leave quickly even when danger is gone, and he asked if there was anything he could do to help, and Sarah suggested that Lily needed stability and supportive routines and caring adults who stayed present, and Mark said he would keep showing up, and he meant it, and a week later Sarah returned with news that made everyone quiet and serious, and she said they had found a record about Lily's mother, and that the system had listed her as having passed away, but there were also details about a possible relative in another town, and Lily was sitting nearby. And she heard the words even though they were spoken softly, and her face changed, and she froze, and Max pressed against her leg, and Nora moved closer and took Lily's hand gently and asked Lily if she wanted to talk or simply sit, and Lily whispered that she was scared of being sent away again, and Mark immediately told her that nobody would take her without caring for her feelings, and Sarah explained that any next step would be slow and careful and based on what was best for Lily, and Lily asked one question in a tiny voice, and that question made Mark's eyes burn because it was so simple and so heavy, and she asked if she could keep Max no matter where she went, and Sarah said she would fight for that, and Nora said Max belonged with Lily, and Mark said he would help too, and Lily looked at them like she could not believe three adults would fight for the same small thing that mattered most, and that night Lily did not sleep much, and Mark sat in the living room with a small lamp on while Nora rested in a chair nearby, and Lily sat on the couch holding Max and looking at the notebook of drawings, and after a long silence Lily spoke about her mother again, and she said her mother used to sing softly while washing clothes, and she said her mother always saved the best bite of food for Lily, and she said her mother would tell her to never stop being kind even when life becomes hard, and Lily's voice shook, but she kept speaking because she wanted someone to know her mother was real and not just a sad memory, and Mark listened and did not interrupt, and when Lily finished she rested her head on Max, and tears finally rolled down her cheeks, and Nora wiped them gently, and Mark felt the truth break his heart again, but in a different way, because now he could also feel hope forming around that pain, and the next day Sarah arranged a meeting with the possible relative by video call so Lily would not be pushed into a sudden move, and the call showed an older woman named Amina with tired eyes and a kind face, and Amina said she had known Lily's mother years ago, and she had been searching for news but did not know where to look, and she said she wanted to help Lily if Lily wanted that too, and Lily did not speak at first, and she hid her face in Max's fur, and Mark told Lily she could take her time, and she did not have to decide quickly, and Amina said she understood, and she told Lily that her mother once spoke about Lily with pride and said Lily was brave and smart, and the word brave made Lily lift her head and look at the screen, and Amina asked Lily if she liked drawing, and Lily nodded slightly, and Amina smiled and said maybe one day Lily could show her drawings and talk about the garden, and Lily did not smile fully but her eyes softened again, and after the call Sarah said there would be more steps and checks and visits before any decision, and she promised that Lily would stay with Nora for now, and Max would stay too, and Lily finally let out a deep breath like she had been holding it for days. And weeks went on and Lily started learning small routines like folding clothes and helping in the kitchen and reading simple stories in the afternoon, and Mark brought children books and Lily began sounding out words slowly, and each new word felt like a small door opening, and Max became healthier and his fur grew back in thin places, and Nora took pictures of Lily smiling and sent them to Sarah for the case record, and one day Lily asked Mark a question that showed how far she had come, and she asked if he still worked at night, and Mark said yes, and Lily said she hoped he would keep looking for other kids who were cold and alone, and Mark promised he would, and he also promised something else inside his heart, and he promised he would never forget Lily's story because it proved that one moment of stopping could change a life. And on a quiet evening Lily stood in the garden holding the watering can, and she looked at the sky turning orange, and she whispered that she missed her mother, and Nora hugged her gently, and Lily did not pull away, and Max leaned against her legs, and Mark watched from the porch, and felt tears in his eyes because the truth that broke his heart had also built something new, and Lily was no longer sleeping among trash and fear, but among warmth and care and steady promises, and the world still had problems and unfairness, but in this one corner of it, a little girl and her dog had found a path back to life, and that was enough to make Mark believe that kindness could be stronger than the cold night.